Hello, folks. South Africa's government of national unity senior leaders are off in China for their bootlicking trip to pay homage to their overlords in the communist paradise of China, where Uyghurs have their organs harvested and are oppressed, and China continues to illegally occupy Tibet, a country that did not attack it. Well, busy sharing their collective thoughts on how the world should be reordered. Headline said all. China gives government of national unity green light as two nations strengthen relations. Well, thank goodness the Chinese said it's okay for South Africa to have a government of national unity. South Africa and China vow stronger ties as Ramaphosa starts state visit. Chinese President Xi Jinping, the president for life, there are no elections for him. He's made himself president for life, called on China and South Africa to beef up solidarity and cooperation in a new era and a new journey, which meets the shared aspirations of the two peoples. He made the remarks when having talks with President Ramaphosa, who's in Beijing, for the summit of FOCAC, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, and also a state visit. Now, President Xi pointed out that the friendship between China and South Africa stems from their mutual support in the fight for national liberation, which ended for China in 1949 and for South Africa in 1994, didn't it? Anyway, from their mutual assistance in advancing national development, and from their unity and coordination in pursuit of international equity and justice. Really? And this is the same China that commits international offenses against the Philippines, Japan, throws its weight around the South China Seas, does immense ecological damage to the Scarborough Shoal, to the Paracels. Yeah. The same one that defies International Court of Justice decisions that go against it. Yeah, they're concerned about international equity and justice. The same China that invaded Korea in 1950 is the same China that invaded Vietnam in 1979. International equity and justice. What a crock. Now, both sides support a comprehensive reform to the United Nations. Interesting that China is a permanent member of the Security Council, and they want reform, including its Security Council, with a view of making it more democratic, representative, effective, and efficient. Well, making it more democratic will make it less representative, less effective, and less efficient. More voices do not make things work. Look at the African Union, where you have to have consensus because of no sovereignty. Does not work. They want to increase the representation of developing countries in the Council's membership so that it can adequately respond to prevailing global challenges and support the legitimate aspirations of emerging developing countries to play a greater role in international affairs, in particular the United Nations, including the Security Council. Okay. I guess you haven't been paying attention to world events for the past 6 decades. UN has virtually no impact. Now, both sides agreed to make active efforts to restore development as the centerpiece of the agenda of international cooperation. That's kind of what the U.S.'s centerpiece of international cooperation is in Africa. Now, unfortunately as hell, it's become more security related, but in general and historically, it has been overwhelmingly development that the United States is focused on. Now, China expressed its full support for South Africa's G20 presidency in 2025. South Africa, a flailing economy, virtually no contribution to global GDP, is now going to be president of the G20. Isn't that comical? By the way, apparently the African Union is now a member of the G20. Really? Now, both sides commended each other on their respective roles in terms of resolving the Russia-Ukraine conflict and welcomed the common understanding between China and Brazil on the political settlement of the Ukraine crisis, as well as the peace mission by the African Union. The peace mission, the one in which the South Africans pissed off the Poles, the one that accomplished nothing other than getting frequent flyer miles for corrupt African politicians. Yeah, what peace mission? And their common understanding? Yeah, the Chicoms are in the barrel with the Russians when they agreed to buy their wood, their petrol, their iron, all of their resources so that they can have cash to fight this war against Ukraine. So, and of course, the ANC is lockstep in sync with them, promoting Putin. Well, Ramaphosa did address something important here. He talked to Xi Jinping, and he said he wanted to narrow the country's trade deficit with Beijing. China is the world's second biggest economy, South Africa's largest trading partner globally. But last year, the value of its imports from China far outstripped its exports. Well, that's pretty much been the story all along. As South Africa, we would like to narrow the trade deficit and address the structure of our trade, Ramaphosa told his host. We urge for more sustainable manufacturing, job-creating investments. Now, South Africa sold China $12.5 billion worth of goods in 2023. and imported 25 billion, nearly twice as much. So South Africa, like most of us, has a massive trade deficit with China, in no small measure because the Chinese illicit trade practices, violation of World Trade Organization, copyright theft, trademark theft, intellectual property theft, industrial espionage, all of those things, plus the protectionism in their market, not letting South African goods get into the market. But hey, the South Africans, government of national unity, went there. They licked the boots of their Chinese communist overlords. There you go. Well done. Nothing really tangible came out of this or will come out of this. It's not like they'll come back with $10 billion in loans or grants. Not going to happen. If it does, I'll cover it. Cheers, folks.